Okay, so we'll start with the town fiscal budget, this FY25 town general fund budget. The proposed budget for this year, we've gone through the process in December. First, I want to start out, I want to recognize Lauren Bloom had brought to our attention in December and at the last meeting, some errors, clerical errors, not with the official financial document, but with a budget document. I want to address that right open. I thank Lauren, I met with Lauren, we came in. I believe we resolved, we believe that we resolved what that issue was. It was an issue with a spreadsheet, one that has been used to carry forward to the general, or to the annual report. And it was supposed to have actual numbers and it had budgeted numbers. And we had found, and Lauren reported that there were years in the past that had that happen as well. Amber accepted, acknowledged that we made that mistake and we want to be transparent. We did accept, acknowledge that mistake. To prevent that from happening in the future, I met with finance team, the treasurer, who is the elected official for the town to handle the money. And going forward, to prevent that from occurring in the future, that document will be prepared by the finance department, shared with the treasurer once it's completed, prior to it being inserted in the town report. So that's the new control. He's an elected official. His priority is the town's finances, and we will make sure that this document going forward is accurate. I've also asked the treasurer to do not an audit, but a review of all of the Schedule 1s back to 2016 to go through to make sure. There was a question about 600,000. I don't know where that number comes from, but I've asked the treasurer to go through and make sure that the Schedule 1s, the information that people went and voted and read in the report is accurate. That is prepared by the auditor. We hope it's accurate. I believe it to be accurate. In addition to that, if we hired NEMRIC, which is a New England Municipal Resource Center, to go through our bookwork, our operating system, to look for anything that would be irregular or appear to be a fraud, a misrepresentation of money, or anything to do with the operating system. That report will be here. The person that will be doing it will be here on February 5th, along with the town's auditor, who we spend, I think, about $30,000 a year to audit the community's operating of funds, moving cash and expenditures. So if any of those things, any of those three different people have any question or there's any irregularity, then I will go to the board and ask them to bring in a specialist to look to see if what is happening. If there is any indication that there's any kind of fraud or discrepancy or irregularity with the way the town of Milton is doing business. To me, the integrity of this institution and the finances is more important than any person. We accept there was a mistake. Shouldn't have happened. It did. We own it. We're happy to own it, but I think I put in place a process to reassure the residents of this community that our bookwork is accurate. This town is in great financial position from everything I know. As a chief administrative officer, I believe this town to be in excellent financial position. We have a very strong fund balance, and I believe that we are following our policies and our admin code as the auditor will report on the 5th. So I just want to start with that. I want to acknowledge Lauren. People don't always look at it. We went through a bunch of people. Thank you. Thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Say something. So I understand there's no public forum here. I do have a statement that clarifies the numerous other years that have discrepancies that haven't been addressed.
This will go back until 2014.
And then I also, related to what you just said, wanted to ask if what you're commenting right here supersedes what I had found, that there is a town fraud policy dated in 2013 that says that you do an internal investigation and you're
We
not
haven't-
required to release the information to the public.
We will release any information to the public, but
Okay,
we haven't
so what
found
you're saying
fraud.
supersedes what the policy for the
Right.
town
We
is.
have not found fraud. We have acknowledged there was an error.
Mhm.
We have fixed it. We will update the new town report that's coming. There will be a notation at the bottom of that that says last year's information was inaccurate. We can't go back to 2014 or 12 or whatever, but I will fix what we can.
Mhm.
Because again, if people don't trust government, they don't trust the finances, we're all in deep trouble. And I will do everything I can to make sure and restore if anybody has questions about that. But this process will get us in an affordable, a forensic audit, if that's what it needs. It's gonna take the approval of the board, we're gonna have to find the money and all that, but it will be done if it is needed. And that's.
So
I
to
wanna make
clarify,
sure.
you will be transparent with it and it will not
Absolutely.
follow the policy, which is to keep it
Absolutely
under
follow the
wraps.
policy,
Okay, thank you.
absolutely. But I do, thank you. I wanna make sure. People bring stuff to our attention, we need to acknowledge it, give them credit. I'm doing that, and I believe our team works really hard, and hopefully this new control that we put in place will prevent it in the future. If it doesn't, we'll have to modify it and make it better. But I will do everything I can for the board, for the residents, and we own it. And I, as the town manager, I own it. It was a mistake, wasn't fraud at this point. So with that said, I wanna go into the budget. So this year's budget, $10,025,278. It's raising $7,689,925 to be raised by property taxes. That's an increase of 2.46% or $240,300 over the current FY24 budget. This is less than 1% on the property tax rate, and we'll go into a little bit more detail how that's done. And if you have a home of $350,000 or less, your increase is anticipated to be $25 for next year. We have used, and you'll see as we go through this, we use a 0% growth in the grand list to use these numbers. We do that as a conservative measure in budgeting. I know the grand list has gone up some, I don't know how much yet. We will know in April. So I can't sit here now and promise you what your taxes will be if I make an assumption that the grand list is going up a certain number. There's enough estimating and budgeting, as all these people here will say. This process started in October for a year that doesn't start until July next year. So we have to make the best guess. We've chosen, in my tenure with this board and previous boards, to use a 0% growth in grand list. So that will carry out through here. Next slide. Okay, so this budget, we'll start with an overview. There's revenue and expenditures in budgets, as we know. This budget has an increase in revenue, and we attribute it to interest income. We've seen that we budgeted $90,000 more in interest income because we're still receiving a good return on the town's money. We also are running more rescue calls. We are providing an additional paramedic level service, and we are seeing additional revenue come in as a result of those services being provided to the town. We also have a new solar array that's permitted, and the numbers and everything I've been given, and it's likely to come online early 2024, which would then put money into the FY25 budget. See there, one thing I forgot to put on here is the Grange. The Grange, as many of you know, was a project that took most of last year to get going, but we've seen some significant use of the facility. It's generating more revenue than we saw this last year. So there's a number that we put in, like 20,000? 25,000 of revenue that I didn't put up there. The other thing that you'll see here, this decreased contingency line item. Back last year at this time, we were in the midst of negotiating with the Milton Police Benevolent Association. We built a budget that we didn't know exactly what the salaries were gonna be. Because if anybody's been following policing around Chittenden County, it's hard to get police officers, and number two, it's expensive. So we were in the midst of negotiation. That contract was signed in February of 2023. And so when we built the budget, we were estimating what that contract might mean to cost. We added $20,000 to the contingency line last year to help offset those expenses, if needed, as any other contractual obligations that were needed. So we decreased that 20,000 in this budget, so that went down. All right, next. The upward pressure, or what's causing the budget to go up, is we have contractual pay increases for employees represented by the unions, collective bargaining groups, and we are in this budget a 5% pay raise for non-represented staff. Health insurance, healthcare premiums have increased by 9% over last year. And one of the big drivers in our cost, we have a decent health insurance plan for our staff, but it's expensive. A family plan is $32,500 a year. A two-person is $22,000 something. When we're building these budgets, we have historical data, and then when employees decide to switch and move on to the policy, it has a significant impact to our budget. In this year, we saw about, I think there were 2 families that came onto the plan, and 3 two-persons, so it was like $100,000+ in the healthcare line. A new expenditure this year is the child care credit tax. That's for child care services. Every employer in Vermont, as of July 1st, January 1st? When is it? July 1st. Has to start paying a tax for child care services. It's matched, the employee pays part, but the town's employer pays part. That's about a $15,000 increase. The other thing, you'll see the additional operational costs associated with the new public works facility in the Grange. I just talked about the Grange and how much revenue it's gonna bring in. There are expenses, heat, lights, so on. Those were budgeted, and we rented that place for a number of years, so we knew what we were paying. The public works facility, as many of you know, out here in the back, we have a new building that's being built. It is scheduled to come on board, finished in October. So July 1 starts the calendar year. We're gonna heat that building next year. We're gonna we're gonna have power bills and so on. So we needed to make sure in this budget that we got estimates from the gas company and the power company and so on, what the building will cost the town to run. It's a little bit of a double because we still have the ice house, the existing garage. It's still gonna be, there's a little bit of time. So in the next year, you'll see that come off as far as operations. But right now, there's a little bit of doubling. So that's on there as well. Next page. Comparison to tax rates. So the 2024 rate. So we have our municipal tax rate. The next one is exempt properties. So currently we have the Arrowhead Senior Building is exempt. The Milton Family Center is exempt.
That's it.
There's only 2 now. There used to be the Grange, but we own it now, so it doesn't get taxed. What that means is the town still has to pay the school tax on those two properties. So that number equates to what that cost to the town is to the state ed fund. Okay, the tax rate. The veterans exemption, if you served and you're a veteran of this country, the state of Vermont allows you up to a $40,000 deduction, or
Be 50% disabled.
If you're 50%
disabled,
disabled.
but it's up to $40,000.
Correct.
If you've been adjudicated by the VA.
So again, just like the exempt properties, that is fine, but the town of Milton still has to pay the education fund taxes. So that number represents what the town's going to be paying to the ed fund in your tax rate. It went up in 2025. I believe there's 1 new person that is eligible. And again, this stuff really won't sugar out. That's why some of these numbers are always fluid. until the grand list is finalized, which isn't until April 1st. And these things come into play at that time. The total town tax rate is 0.5036 currently. It will go up to 0.5196. Again, estimating 0% growth in the grand list, that's 0.7 of a penny increase. Next. Tax breakdown, if you were ever here before, we used 200,000 because that's what an average house is. Now it's 350. So we try to use an average median price house to determine this cost. So if you look at 24, the municipal tax, $1,726. 2025, it's going to be $1,747. That's an increase of $21. And then you go down through and you'll see what the exempt properties cost each homeowner, what the veterans exemption cost, and then the fire and rescue fund. So at the bottom, your tax rate our taxes are $1,763 currently in FY24, $1,787 in FY25. $25. Next. Thank you, Amy, for sending your slides last night. We never used to incorporate this, but it does, if your house is more or less, you can see what your tax might be, per month, and annual increase. We went up to 500. I know we have houses that are worth more than that, and properties are, but at least you get an idea what the town implications, the budget implications to this tax rate. Next. Here's where your money goes. I like to show this because I think it's important. The town total budget, $10,025,278. You got 6% in debt service, and we'll see that in this coming year, we dropped off about $80,000 of debt that we don't have. 3% goes into economic development, 6% culture. We're not putting, the public works is 28%, public safety is 37%, and the town general fund, our general government is 20%. That gets you your $10,025,000. And so if you came to any of the budget meetings, you would have seen a sheet that was spread out and had a number of years across it, and that's what we used to go through the whole process. We wanted to make sure that if you'd seen that before, you're gonna see the same thing again. This is revenue, and you'll see that at the bottom line, the $61,212, that's the debt service, transfer for debt. Revenue increases, property taxes, 94,000 increase, down to, if you look at the interest income I talked about, investment income is 90,000. Another one is a rescue is 24,900 more. The 25.5 is the Grange that I already talked about. That's in revenue. Recreation 3,400. That sum is 240,300, 2.46%. And that will equate to the expenses, which is the next column. If you look at, this is the same sheet that we've been through a number of times through the budget process. Selectboard, general expenses down the side. Each department is broken out there. Total expense increase 240,300 for a 2.46% increase. Anything? And town meeting day, March 5th. You can vote early. Ballots should be here around February 14th. And we hope that you will come out to support the budget.